Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Prime Minister for an advance copy of her statement. The withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration represent a huge and damaging failure. After 2 years of bungled negotiations, the government has produced a botched deal that breaches the Prime Minister's own red lines and does not meet our 6 tests. The government, Mr. Speaker, is in chaos. Their deal risks leaving the country in an indefinite halfway house without a real say. When even the last Brexit secretary, who theoretically at least negotiated the deal, says, "I cannot support the proposed deal," what faith does that give anyone else in this place or in this country? The government simply cannot put to Parliament this half-baked deal that both the Brexit Secretary and his predecessor have rejected. No deal is not a real option, and the government has not seriously prepared for it. The government must publish its full legal advice and the Treasury a full economic impact assessment of the deal, and the OBR an updated economic forecast. The withdrawal agreement is a leap in the dark, an ill-defined deal by a never-defined date. There is no mention of the Prime Minister's favoured term, implementation period, anywhere in the 585 pages of this document. And no wonder. There is precious little new to implement spelt out in either the agreement or the political declaration. Article 3 of the agreement states transition can be extended to end by 31st of December 20XX. Can the Prime Minister confirm that this permits extensions to be rolled on until 2099? Can the Prime Minister confirm that if the UK government cannot agree a comprehensive future relationship by January 2021, which few believe would be possible, and the last 2 years gives us no confidence this government can, then those negotiations would have to be put on hold? Because the focus would then inevitably shift from negotiations on the future relationship to the negotiations on an extension of the transition period, including further payments to the EU. Article 132 sets out this process fairly clearly. So can the Prime Minister firstly tell the House how confident she is that a deal can be done by the end of 2020, and also confirm that if a new trade agreement is not agreed by the 31st December 2020, then Article 132 applies, paying a huge financial contribution in order to extend the transition period, if we are to avoid triggering the backstop, as the Prime Minister insists is her position. On the backstop itself, should it come into force, there is no time limit or end point, and if either party requests a review, and if there is no agreement, it goes to independent arbitration. The backstop locks Britain into a deal from which it cannot leave without the agreement of the EU. In the backstop, restrictions on state aid are hardwired in with an arbitration mechanism, but no such guarantee exists for workers' rights. Can the Prime Minister also confirm that the backstop applies separate regulatory rules to Northern Ireland, creating a de facto border down the Irish Sea, as Northern Ireland will be subject to the customs union, but not the rest of the UK? This is despite the fact that the current Prime Minister said this is something, and I quote, no UK Prime Minister could ever agree to. Another of her red lines breached. In fact, the list of EU measures that continue to apply to the UK in respect of Northern Ireland runs to 68 pages of the agreement. This affects VAT declarations and rules of origin checks. And it's clear the Prime Minister's red line regarding the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice has also been torn up. By 2021, Under the Prime Minister's plan, we will either be in a backstop or still in transition, where we'll continue to contribute to the EU budget and follow the rules overseen by the ECJ. It is utterly far-fetched for the Prime Minister to say this plan means we take control over our laws, money and borders. After 2 years of negotiation, all the government has really agreed is a vague 7-page outline of political declarations, which looks like a substantial dilution of the Prime Minister's previously declared negotiating priorities. There is only the scantiest mention of workers' rights, consumers' rights or environmental protection. No determination to achieve frictionless trade or even trade as frictionless as possible. No ambition to negotiate a new comprehensive customs union that would protect trade, jobs and industry. And so uncertainty continues for business and all those that work in those businesses. That risks decisions for investment being deferred even further, costing jobs and living standards, and many companies may decide the lack of certainty simply means they will Brexit. No clear plan to get a strong deal with the single market to ensure continued access to European markets in services, merely a vague commitment to go beyond the baseline of the World Trade Organization. Both the First Ministers of Wales and Scotland made clear to the Prime Minister that participation in a customs union to protect the economy and jobs was essential. Likewise, Mr. Speaker, there is no ambition to achieve continuation of the European-wide arrest warrant or an equivalent, and no clarity about our status with Europol, Eurojust or even the Galileo project. And there is no clarity about any future immigration system between the UK and the EU. And following the Windrush scandal, many EU nationals here will have no confidence at all in this government to deliver a fair and efficient system. The Brexit Secretary promised a substantive document. He's obviously no longer here. So can the Prime Minister inform the House when that detailed framework agreement will be with us? Mr. Speaker, this is not the deal the country was promised, and Parliament cannot, and I believe will not, accept a false choice between this bad deal and no deal. People around the country will be feeling anxious this morning about the industries they work in, the jobs they hold, about the stability of their communities and their country. The government must now withdraw this half-baked deal, which is clear does not have the backing of the Cabinet, this Parliament or the country as a whole.